And it looks like our numbers have stabilized and everybody's in from the waiting room. So we can head to the opening slide here, and I will hand it off to our guest speakers and the guest hosts of this week's webinar.
Thanks a lot, Catherine. So I want to welcome everyone joining us today. And my name is Robert Bowser. I'm at the Barrow Neurological Institute, and also on board is James Barry from Mass General. And we are incredibly excited to share with you some updates on the ALS study and to help and answer questions in the Q&A part of the session. Next slide. Many are probably familiar with ALS or hopefully have heard about it. So ALS is an NIH-funded project, and there's two coordinating centers. The West Coordinating Center is located in Phoenix, Arizona at the Barrow Neurological Institute, and I'm the PI at the West Coordinating Center. And James Barry, my colleague, is the PI at the East Coordinating Center located at Mass General. Next slide. So ALS, our consortium, we work hand in hand with the NIH and another group called AMP-ALS that you see on the top here. And AMP stands for Accelerating Medicines Partnership. The goal of AMP programs, and ALS is the newest of the AMP programs, is accumulating data and facilitating open science. So collecting data, information, and making that readily available to the research community to identify, to find new insights into disease and help identify and target pathways for new drug development. And so we work hand in hand with, again, NIH, with the foundations of NIH, with the AMP-ALS Steering Committee and members of the AMP-ALS program, and really working hand in hand and in constant communication, building our consortium to make it as successful as possible. So within this consortium, again, we have the two coordinating centers. We have shared protocols. We're all working together hand in hand. We have our own steering committee and other committee structures within the ALS consortium. And we have a total of 35 clinical sites, 19 that are under the direction of the West Coordinating Center and 16 at the East Coordinating Center. Again, we're sharing how data is collected, how data is stored. We have a single IRB that's through MGB, and all this information, and again, all the data and biosamples and other types of data that we'll mention in a few moments, all of that then will go into the AMP-ALS knowledge portal that's listed here on the left, and all the biosamples are going to the NIH National Biorepository called BioSend. Next slide. Look, listed here are the 35 clinical sites currently involved in ALS. And what you'll see is, we have geographical distribution across the country. The blue sites are under the coordination of the West Center and the orange under the East. But you also see there are a number of areas and states within our country that do not have a clinical site. And, we'll get more involved in describing how we are approaching and enrolling patients, or will be enrolling patients, throughout the U.S. So the goal, again, is to have access for everyone that wants to be involved in this program, the ability to participate in clinical research. Next slide. So this is a timeline of where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. And so what you see down on the bottom, funding awarded. So both James and myself wrote individual grants in earlier of 2023, and we were selected as the two coordinating centers. So this was awarded by NIH really at the end of September of 2023. So we really got kicked off in October of 2023. So immediately then we actually had to develop what's our protocols? What are we going to do? How are we going to work together and build the ALS system and protocol and consortium? So a lot of efforts went into developing the protocols. Then we had to get IRB approval at the central IRB, and then work with sites to both execute contracts in order for sites to be involved in a consortium, and then to get IRB approval at the sites, to get sites activated. And a lot of training goes into that. and ultimately a first patient enrolled. And we are really pushing to do that by July of this year. Then we've been working also with our internal teams developing data capture systems using NeuroBank, which has previously existed, but developing that into something called NeuroPro, where participants can answer questionnaires on using their devices at home anywhere in the country. And then launching these databases now in sort of Q4 of 24. As we move into 25, what we see is we're activating more and more sites and now trying to enroll more and more participants, working with yet one of our vendors called Sage to build this knowledge portal. And the goal is to enroll over 2,000 participants by Q1 of 2026. It's a daunting endeavor, something that we're really excited to successfully perform, and something that's never been done in the ALS research community before. And then make all this information data available to the research community, again, working with Sage and our colleagues within the AMP-ALS community, so that by early of 2025, we can start to have this data portal and then sharing data as we move forward. Now, underlying all these efforts, are down at the bottom, what you can see is early on, there are efforts in consortium building. And this is really, building our internal teams. We have a tremendous project management team at both of our coordinating centers that are working hard constantly at building this consortium, and then also thinking about how do we grow the consortium? How do we expand it, potentially including other sites, potentially including additional projects that we would roll into all ALS, and obviously always maintaining our system as we move forward. So there's a lot of internal work and continuous work throughout this whole process and endeavor. Next slide. So who are we enrolling? So our patient cohorts. So we have obviously symptomatic individuals living with ALS. And these could be individuals that attend one of our sites. So we have on-site visits or fully remote visits. So these are individuals that might be in rural settings within states that have clinical sites, or maybe in states that don't have clinical sites, but located throughout the country. So really making strong efforts to enroll patients throughout the country to both increase the ability of individuals to participate in research studies, but also to increase the diversity of our research population. Healthy controls, these will be individuals that attend clinics, that will go on site for clinic visits twice, and then asymptomatic individuals that harbor gene variants. And this is a hybrid approach where there's annual on-site visits, and really that's doing a full workup to look for any signs of the onset of ALS, but then additional remote visits throughout the year. We'll be providing blood samples that are collected remotely at the homes of participants. Goals are, again, collecting longitudinal biofluids that are linked to detailed clinical information. These biofluids include whole blood, plasma, serum, and cerebral spinal fluid on a subset of participants. And then collecting fully remote digital data each month with Linus Health, as these are speech recordings, and through our NeuroPro questionnaires, where we're collecting information on a monthly basis from participants. Next slide. So where are we? Site activations. We excitedly have 20 of our 35 clinical sites have centralized IRB approval. 13 of those sites have now moved into an activation stage. So now they have local IRB approval, the working groups, the site investigators, and their staff have been fully trained on all the workings of and everything that's involved in all ALS, so they get activated. And so now they can actually start to enroll. And our goal is really trying to get sites activated within 4 weeks of central IRB approval. So it's a lot of heavy work that's done in that 4 weeks from central IRB approval until sites can actually be activated. Listed on the right are active sites that are enrolling participants now. And again, so we have centralized IRB approval at 57% of our sites, and 37% now are being activated. So very exciting, as now we can actually start enrolling individuals into all ALS. Next slide. So where are we? We have 97 participants enrolled as of yesterday, 11/20. And so we have two protocols, assess and prevent. The assess protocol includes symptomatic on-site, symptomatic off-site, and controls, the healthy controls. So we have 31 now on the symptomatic on-site and 12 controls in the assess protocol. Symptomatic off-site, you see 0. So we're still working on our fully remote process and getting one of our vendors called PCM to train the home phlebotomists nationwide in order to enroll. And so excitingly, we're hoping in the next month we'll be able to enroll in the offsite program. The second protocol is prevent. And here we have 54 participants enrolled in prevent and 3 within a genetic testing sub-study within the prevent protocol. So again, very exciting that we have 97 participants enrolled as of yesterday. Next slide. Activation and enrollment, you see here we have 13 sites activated. We're actually slightly above our projected activation of sites. But on the right, one sees again, we have 97 participants enrolled. We're actually slightly below our projected enrollment. And it runs as sort of a hockey stick. Obviously, on the further right you go, it's an accelerated enrollment. And so, we're working hard to increase the number of sites that are activated. And again, trying to bring in the fully remote enrollment participation. And so we can really hit the ground running so that when we need to enroll at very high levels, as you see on the right, we can hit these target numbers. Next slide. I'm going to hand off now to James Barry, who's going to talk about some of our year 2 initiatives and some of the other activities within all ALS.
Thanks so much. So I just want to underline some of what you went through, Bob, which is, our enrollment goals for this project are different than anything that's ever been done in ALS before. And in fact, when we present this to our colleagues who aren't involved, they often say, how are you gonna get that done? And I think that our answer is really that we're going to get this done because we have a really dedicated group of sites, a really dedicated group of investigators, and we really hope that we are doing something that will benefit the community of ALS far beyond any of the science that Bob or me or any of the PIs could do alone. And we can only do it if we're able to do this as a community. And so, today marks a really important point for this project, which is that it is at a point where we can now sort of say there are places to enroll. Anybody who's on the call that wants to be involved can be involved. We will help you get involved. There are still pieces that are coming together, and I'll show you some of that as we look at our year 2 initiatives. But we are really excited to launch into something that is bigger and better than anything that we've worked on before, and really will change the way that we think of ALS science and ALS resources. So with that, I'll just say sort of where we're thinking about year 2. We're launched. We've enrolled 100 people. It's been over a couple of months that we've enrolled 100 people. That is actually a little bit behind what our audacious goals are, but way ahead of any project that either of us have worked on or any of the MPIs have worked on as well. And we're already contributing data to the EDCs that will become the portal that will support researchers around the globe who find the answers for ALS. So in year 2, one of the things that we're doing is initiating quarterly all ALS webinars. This initial webinar is sort of, we're kind of a guest on the HEALEY platform trial webinar. And what we're going to do from here is establish the All ALS webinar series as well, so that we have sort of a home for this in addition to the HEALEY webinar series. We're excited to do that, and we're also incredibly excited to, as always, to be on the HEALEY platform trial webinar. But this really, again, this marks a real milestone for us, and I think an emotional, really important emotional milestone for us. The All ALS website is going to be launched in the next month. It's very close, and I'll show you a design of it. I think we're really excited about what we're gonna be able to show. That takes longer getting content on the web, getting all of those technologies vetted, and I'll also show you that there's a participant interest form, and getting that vetted and secure, and making sure that that's all working. It takes some time. We have 21 sites that have IRB approval. Pardon me, we will have 21 sites that have IRB approval by January, and we're actually ahead of schedule to get to those 21 sites. We also will have those activated. We say by March. We plan to be ahead of schedule on that, and we really hope that we will be ahead of schedule. We've said, I've said it, Bob said it, we have audacious goals for enrollment. We want to engage the community, and we know that Catherine Small, who leads these webinars for the HEALEY platform trial, has been incredibly important in building the community that we need so that people know how they can enroll in the platform trial and where to do that. And we are going to hire equivalent, not quite as good, Catherine, equivalent positions for the All ALS Consortium as patient navigators, so that we have plenty of people who can do outreach, who can respond to queries that are coming in through the web, help us with the webinars, and really work with the community, the ALS community, people living with the disease, caregivers and loved ones of people living with the disease, and other advocacy groups. And that, we see that as a very important part of our community engagement strategy. And we also will be hiring outreach managers. And these are people who really will be working with the sites to identify things that are challenging at the sites that may be slowing enrollment. These are resources we've never really been able to put toward this kind of a study before. And I think they will, really pay off in terms of how we move forward. They will also be developing a formal community engagement plan that will be developed along with people living with the disease. And we are putting together already a recruitment, retention, and DEI committee that will be very involved in the community engagement plan as well. Now, we plan to enroll participants at each of our 35 sites. To have 35 sites enrolling in a project like this is quite remarkable. But we also want to go beyond that, and we've developed these decentralized strategies so that we can enroll participants from states who do not have a center. And we'll be tracking that to make sure to hold our own feet to the fire, to make sure that we're enrolling people from states that don't have a center in their state. Our outreach coordinators, we want to make sure that they're making these site engagements. And then the remainder of what we want to do is really enroll at a very rapid clip so that we're getting 1,000 people, more than 1,000 people into the project by this time next year. So, these are the kind of guiding lights for us. There are other sort of milestones that we want to achieve, but these are some of the real North Stars for us into the next year. Next slide. So All ALS is a place where we are both building some innovations, and you heard about NeuroPro, which is delivering questionnaires, but we're also building on innovations that have been happening in other venues across ALS research, but also other kinds of research. We often turn to oncology research because they've met with incredible successes to try to borrow from the best and really make this something special, not just in size, but in scope. So we're creating a speech bank. Participants will have an app so that they can record their voice. This will happen every month. That app is powered by Linus Health, formerly called Oral Analytics. This is a group we have a long history of working with. They have a wonderful product. And I was just meeting with them today to talk about, how the project is going, and we're tracking, all the people who are enrolled and whether they've made their first speech recording, and really doing quite well. Around 90% already have made their first recording. we've created our consent forms to allow us, under the right circumstances and in a confidential way, to share that data with speech researchers so that we can improve our understanding. So we can bring things to bear like artificial intelligence, like large language models that will allow us to investigate motor speech and make this an endpoint that will drive our clinical trials even faster. E-consent, that is going through informed consent forms and documenting that, but doing that not just on paper and pencil, but over a computer, using a tablet. That's something that we're incorporating. Now, that's been done in many small studies. We're working with a vendor called Florence to really give us a streamlined solution so that this really can be done. It can be monitored centrally so that we know that people are doing this consent right. We can catch, any problems with it along the way. And we have a really robust record. That's important because we're asking people to consent to potentially allow their speech to be shared, potentially allow their genomics to be shared. And we need to be able to track all of that. That has been a paper pencil process in the past. It leaves a lot of, first of all, it's very time consuming, but it also leaves room for error. This will centralize all of that. The biorepository is BioSend. This is a place, a wonderful biorepository funded by the NIH. It is also a biorepository that houses samples from related disorders, Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia. And I was just presenting about all ALS to colleagues here at Mass General. And those who were doing research and using samples, their first question to me was, are we going to be able to get frontotemporal dementia samples, Alzheimer's samples, to use as comparisons and to have this housed together, to use similar processes through the NIH, really, really powerful for our researchers. So it's not just that we're enrolling people in this study, but that we're doing this in a way that brings our researchers in the community the tools that they need to make progress for ALS and other neurodegenerative diseases. The website is powered by Dojo. We have an embedded enrollment tool that I'll talk about in just a moment that we're very excited about. Again, adapted from something that we were doing here at MGH that then became a patient interest form for the platform trial, and really taking the best of that and allowing us to move forward with that for this project. Home phlebotomy is being carried out by PCM. Now, PCM we've used in the platform trial as well. This is a network of phlebotomists and nurses who can go to the home and draw blood. So phlebotomy is just a fancy word for blood draw. So these are people who can go to the home and draw blood. That means that we can do this in a completely decentralized way. We've done this in other studies, both with PCM and with other vendors, and it works. And it allows us to make this a less burden for people who are participating, allow people who can't come into the center, for whom it would take hours to come into our centers, to still participate fully in the study. We touched on NeuroPro. I think that's a huge innovation for this trial, because we can get patient-reported outcomes, direct surveys from people participating in the study. Now, this is something that the FDA directly asked us to incorporate. They said, PROs are incredibly important for our understanding of diseases. So we want you to be thoughtful. We want you to be able to deliver these, and NeuroPro allows us to do that. Every month, participants will get an email with a link so that they can go to their private page and fill out the surveys for that month. And we've spent a long time working with people with ALS, working with people who have run other studies like this, and working with our systems team to build a product that we hope will be easy to use. This can be incorporated with eye gaze devices. It complies with all of the sort of ADA requirements, and has been reviewed again by a group of people living with ALS and caregivers who I think gave us incredibly important feedback, but also we're very happy with the product. So I'm really excited about that. We plan to ask not just functional questions like the ALS-FRSR self-entry form, but also social determinants of health, questions, new questionnaires about breathing, questions about how the disease affects people's lives and the economy of their lives, but also environmental questionnaires. In addition to that, we have been working with the CDC registry so that we can cross-link these two studies and get even deeper environmental questionnaires from CDC, walk those over to all ALS and vice versa, to make this as useful a study as possible. And broadly, we're aligning with other studies, the All FTD study, the natural history study that's going on, Target ALS, the NIH Brain Bank, which is another real need for researchers in ALS, is to have tissue that's available so they can understand the fundamental processes of the disease in the lab. And then there's a sort of similar project to All ALS that's going on in Europe called Precision ALS. And we've been working with Orla Hardiman and the group running Precision ALS to make sure that we can align there. Next slide. The All ALS website, again, will help us track study progress in real time, share that with you, find an All ALS site, and we'll be updating that map as the sites are active to help people make contact. And then the participant interest form, which I'll show you in a little more detail in one moment. Next slide. The participant interest form allows people to go to the website, sign up, and be contacted back about participating in a study, be connected to a closed site, or be connected to a site that can enroll them entirely remotely so that they can do this remotely to the site, but at home for the participant. This is using a technology called REDCap. This is a medical grade, HIPAA compliant, Part 11 compliant, research compliant database that allows us to collect this information. Next slide. I talked about the patient navigator and the outreach manager. These are going to be really, really important for our project. Next slide. So these are some ways to connect with All ALS right now. We have the NEALS Trial Finder, and it's listed on clinicaltrials.gov. The website is coming, and our email currently is allals_info@dignityhealth.org. We're actually updating our email, and when the website launches, we'll have a new email that really reflects that this is a part of All ALS, and we'll be connected to that website URL. So we're excited to make that change, and we'll update this slide and for future regimens as we go. I want to also take this moment to thank the people who have been really critical in us getting to this point. So I want to thank first and foremost NIH for funding this project and having the vision to see where this could go. I want to thank NEALS for supporting the build out into the community of this project. A number of ALS advocacy organizations, and I'm going to forget some, and I apologize, but Les Turner, ALS TDI, IMALS, ALSA, MDA, and many others have contributed to our vision, our ability to move forward, and ALS and the legacy in a huge way for the Prevent All ALS. The AMP-ALS Steering Committee, the AMP-ALS Natural History Committee, and very, very importantly, the AMP-ALS People with Lived Experience Committee, or PWLE Committee, and Dave Schulman, who is really engaging to help us put together a marketing strategy, so to speak, so that we can get the community to know about this exciting study. All right, we have a few questions. We're running a little over. We'll run over by a couple of minutes. We understand not everybody will be able to stay, but maybe what we can do is Bob, I can read some of these to you, and we'll try to answer together. Is this open to non-US residents?
Is it open to non-US? Well, we're working right now it's obviously it's an NIH funded study, so it's open to US residents. So we do have sites obviously at the borders, and we have patients coming in from neighboring countries. And so we're working with NIH now on the ability to include patients like that are coming into our clinics that maybe are not US residents that are living there in our border countries. But that's the extent of open to non-US residents.
Yeah, and that's right. And I guess I would say, look, there are two ways to participate. Well, maybe three. There's on-site and off-site for All ALS, completely remote for Assess All ALS. For the Prevent study, it's all sort of hybrid. Participating, so as far as sort of home phlebotomy, we can only do that within the US.
Yeah.
But if people are participating on-site, let's say somebody was flying from a country outside of the US and participating on-site for this study, absolutely, you do not have to be a US resident. The place where we're still working through some sort of how exactly we do this consent is when data transfers across national lines, we have to be a little cautious about that. So for some of the PROs and the speech recordings, if people are living outside of the US, there may be an extra consent addendum or something we have to add. We're still working through that, but yeah, no.
We will work it, as James was saying. If you
Mhm.
visiting our sites and maybe want to, summer abroad, the ability to continue to participate as you summer abroad.
Yeah, exactly. Or just return for your care. We can incorporate the Assess All ALS into, it's designed to be incorporated into clinic visit and not to slow things down by very much. Most of the information we're getting is clinical information, so should just add a few minutes to your clinic visit. So that's really important. So what's the estimated cost to participants?
And there's no cost to participants.
That's right. And in fact, there is a reimbursement if you need to travel and to participate.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, participating again in this study should be as burden-free and as financially free as possible. And so again, there's no cost to the participants, and providing samples then actually you'll get a reimbursement for providing those samples.
Yeah, that's right. And there's another question. Is there any view as to how the new administration is going to support research clinical studies in the NIH? We don't. I'll just say we don't know that. Anytime there's a change in administration, it's a little unclear what budgets will look like. The NIH is obviously very, very important for advancing research in diseases, and we hope that projects like this one will continue to be funded, and really plan for that to be the case.
Yes.
But of course we just don't know when a new administration comes in what they'll look like, what that will look like. I will just say generally over the last many decades, the amount at which the NIH budget grows has been different by administration and by the economy, but it has not shrunken hugely. So yeah, that's what the historical.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that at least within Congress, there's bipartisan support for NIH and the value of the research that gets done at NIH. So hopefully that will help drive decision-making moving forward in the new administration.
There's one question about how to find, well, there are a couple of questions about how to find specific sites. And I would say that there are a few ways to go about this. The first would be if you know what site you want to go to, if you visit neals.org, neals.org has a contact a specialist page, and there you can actually search by zip code or by name of the clinic, and it will give you contact information for that clinic. The second is if you go to clinicaltrials.org, you can actually search for all ALS, and the active centers will have contact information there specifically for the study. The third is if you go to neals.org again and you click on ALS research and trials, then you can actually search for all ALS, and that's sort of abstracted from clinical trials.
Yeah.
And
I see Kat has already put into the chat the contact info for Texas Neurology, and again the general email that one can also use in order to request information.
Right. Again, we're over time, but I think there are a couple important questions. If you're already a participant in Target ALS, would participation in all ALS require additional sample draws? Bob, do you want to talk about the coordination? This is really important, I think.
Yeah, there's a good coordination here. So if you're at my site at Barrow and you're a Target participant, it's everything will be funneling through not only just the Target portal and use of samples, but also all ALS. And so there isn't additional sample draws required. And also if you participate in a Target ALS study and that ends after 18 months and you wish to continue to participate, you can enroll in all ALS, and then we can continue to collect information and samples from you as a participant moving forward.
Yeah. And I think, that's right. And this really stems from something that we've heard again and again on webinars like these and in forums where we're talking with people with lived experience, that it can be dizzying to think that you have to give, blood or information to many different studies, and can there be coordination? I think that's the key, and that's really a fundamental part of this, that these studies are directly correlated. They're directly aligned, so that we don't need to put people in both of them, that if we're all rowing in the same direction, and that the samples and the clinical information are going to be shared, and can be linked and so forth. So really, I think really important question. I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah.
There's another question about accessing the participant form. Right now, that participant form and the website is not yet live. If you actually, can we put the slide back up with the contact information, Catherine or Jesse? We'll put that slide back up so that we have the contact information. You can email our email address, and we'll put you in touch with the site that is closest to you and open and able to enroll you.
Exactly.
And we can also just put, if you give me 1 second to think, we can, there you go, Catherine did
There it is.
So so here you can see both, again, the Niels Trial Finder address, as well as the clinicaltrials.gov, where you can go and find sites that are activated. And then finally, the email link at the bottom, and Catherine's also put that into the chat as well. There are a few more questions that we just aren't going to be able to get to today. I apologize. We can try to follow up with as many of these as we can. But I really want to thank everybody for being here. This is how we're going to move forward. This is sort of the study that will be the thing that powers at least some of our discoveries going forward. And we're incredibly excited about it. Thank you for participating. Bob?
Thanks a lot, everyone.